As they say, being politically correct is about looking good to others. Being inclusive is about being good. Creating an inclusive work environment means creating a place where everyone feels welcomed and accepted and be able to speak up and provide more value to the organization. With these thoughts, I, Pooja Ranjan, the herder-in-chief of Ethereum Cat Herders, welcome you to the Future of Inclusion 3.0, an event organized to celebrate International Women's Day in association with Blockchain NYC. Ethereum Cat Herders is a decentralized project of volunteers helping out with project management and process improvement to support the Ethereum blockchain. Education and community building are our top priorities. And I'm happy to introduce our co-organizer, Blockchain NYC, a meetup group focused on community and education in the blockchain, Web3, DeFi, and NFT space. We thank Jamil Sheikh, the organizer of Blockchain NYC, for joining us as a moderator for today's panel of wonderful women. I would like to invite Jamil to welcome the brilliant panelists and kick off the event.
Hey, Pooja, thank you so much. Very excited to be here. We've got a rock star lineup of panelists today. I'm very, very excited to hear about their work and their experience. It's International Women's Day, and this event is particularly around celebrating this day and then talking about what opportunities and challenges for further inclusion in the space. So today we have with us Annette, who works with Ethereum developers and represents a specific perspective in the Ethereum community. And we'll be learning about her background in more great detail. I'm not really gonna get into everybody's background and let them cover it. And then we have Ira Yu, who's the chair of the Cascadia Blockchain Council, and an OG in the crypto space. Did an ICO, I think it was over $30 million back in the day, 2017, and has been involved in blockchain education quite heavily. We have Jill Robinson, who is an attorney and works in the blockchain space and has worked for a large number of prominent law firms. And Zaid, who is working for Chainlink Labs. And we all know who Chainlink is, and she's coming from an immigrant family, has a unique perspective on her journey into this space. So I want to kind of welcome all our panelists. The first thing I'm going to ask you guys is to really tell us who you are and how you got into the space. So give us a little bit, take them 2 minutes, 3 minutes to get into your bios. And then how did you get into the space of blockchain or DeFi or NFTs? And maybe we'll start off with Ari.
A little bit of background on how I got into the space. Let's see, I spent a good 12 years in management consulting. So I had a background in business intelligence and databases. And I also spent quite some time as a part-time entrepreneur, nights and weekends with several startups. And so in 2014, I went into a startup as the CEO full-time, worked out of 500 startups in San Francisco. And that's when I started my obsession with micropayments. But you'll notice that micropayments are not a thing here, especially if you're fortunate to live here in the United States. We get charged an extra 75 cents if your credit card is under $5, like when you're buying a coffee, right? It's because most of these traditional financial systems like TradFi is not meant to handle micropayments. So anything under $5, no bueno. I mean, there's too many middlemen and not enough people to pay, not enough money to pay everybody under $5. And so I started working at the startup, the startup that did the ICO, the initial coin offering, where we raised $32 million. And we were doing micropayments of 0.8 of a penny. 0.8 of a penny, like that's unreal, right? Like surreal. And so started learning about cryptocurrencies and Ethereum, decentralized applications became really, really exciting. And then I nosedived into the world of Bitcoin, and I've never been able to leave ever since. Did I answer your question, Jamil?
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, and we get to hear your kids a little bit in the background. So they've introduced themselves as well. That's great. Jill? You're on mute, Jill. You're on mute. Oh,
Yeah, got it. Thanks for having me. I'm Jill Williamson. I know Jamil said Robinson, and in his defense, that used to be my name. So I'm sure he found it off of some old materials or something. My maiden name is Robinson.
Oh, I apologize. We listed you.
Yeah, no,
we listed you with the wrong name here. Sorry.
no big deal. I mean, honestly, the only reason I never changed it back
somebody's getting fired today. Just
the only reason I never changed it back after my divorce is that they're basically the same name. It didn't seem worth the paperwork. So I am an attorney. I've been an attorney for about 20 years. And when I worked for Big Law in DC, I did a lot of work in corporate compliance, white collar defense, and especially in OFAC sanctions and anti-money laundering. And so then I spent a few years in-house. And when I came back to private practice, it was right around 2016, 2017. And some of the other partners in my firm started talking about blockchain. And I looked into it and I thought, this is a great place for somebody with my background. Like, this is exactly, I didn't have a securities background, but, FinCEN was already weighing in. It was clear that, there was going to be a need for somebody with a good knowledge of anti-money laundering laws globally, which I had. To work in this space. And so I dove right in. And then as I started getting clients in the space and talking about the use cases, I was really, frankly, quite enamored of the technology. I had spent a lot of time in the former Soviet Union in the early 90s. And I've spent a lot of time in Africa and other places around the world where people don't have access to traditional banking systems. They don't have access to traditional investments. They don't have ways to save money, and create generational wealth. And so I could immediately see in those ways that blockchain and cryptocurrency could really help in those countries and communities that didn't have access to the kind of investment opportunities and banking that we in the United States just take completely for granted.
Got it. Fantastic. Thank you. Annette, so you do a lot in the education space. Tell us more about your background.
Okay, thank you, Jamil. So hi everyone, I'm Annette, and I'm in the space since 2019. And the reason how I got in was that the friends which I was working with in a co-working space invited me to a crypto conference as a where I signed up as a volunteer, and that's where I fell in love with the community. And since that, I've been flying around the community and trying to help out developers as especially as I came up together with Ethereum Magicians as a project. I haven't found it, but somebody from the founding members reach out to me and ask me if I can help them out with organizing their councils. So since that, I've been with Ethereum Magicians. In between now and then, I work with a couple of more projects. But right now I'm still with Ethereum Magicians, and I'm organizing councils and hosting discussions. And I'm also leading the NFT standards working group, which is a documentation and working group for NFT developers and all things behind NFT standards and ERCs.
Yeah, that's quite a bit. Wow. Thank you. And then Zaid, what's your background, your professional background, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, no problem. And what an all-star crew. Oh my gosh. I'm hearing everybody's backgrounds. It's really impressive. Yeah, so my name is Zaji. I know the name's a little tough. So, and I've been in the space since 2017. I actually joined as an intern straight out of college. So I really was not super familiar with the blockchain space, but I had a friend at an ad tech startup who was looking for some help on the marketing side. And it turned out after I started, I was then explained that the back end was actually being built on a blockchain, which I had no idea when I did actually join the team. So it was around the ICO phase as well. So I was involved in an ICO early in the day. And I was the only marketing person. So I was the community manager, like the content writer, the Twitter manager, everything. And so I went from not knowing anything to thousands of people flooding into all of our accounts, when we launched. And it looks like Ari's like, yep, I get that. And so that was just like a fast track education into how to manage communities within blockchain and understanding what that means. And so I just became super obsessed with the blockchain side. I kind of forgot about the ad tech piece. I was like, I don't really care about that anymore. I really care about micropayments, about cross-border payments. My family is from South America. So instead of going to Western Union, maybe I should send my grandpa Bitcoin. I was thinking about how this was affecting so many different areas of my life that I hadn't realized it could affect. And I just got super inspired. And I was working with some people from like Microsoft, Consensus, some really educational people that helped me kickstart my journey. And so after that, I joined Unstoppable Domains for a few years. I was early stage marketing with them as well, helped them grow out an affiliate influencer platform. And then I went to Chainlink Labs. I'm now an ecosystem strategist over there, working on getting announcements out with all of our integration teams. And I also contribute to a few DAOs, one being Metagamma Delta, which is focused on women and inclusion in Web3. So yeah, super excited to be here. Thank you.
Wow, that's a lot. And I think we're all super excited about being in the space. So I'm going to transition the next set of questions to Pooja, which I think these are the core questions I really want to kind of get answered, which is opportunities and challenges in the space, and boy are there challenges. And so Pooja, do you want to jump into that topic?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jamil. And thank you, ladies. Each one of you has an interesting backstory for the entrance to the Web3 world. That's really fascinating. I'll be curious to dig a bit more in some opportunities and maybe challenges that you may have discovered on the way. So I can maybe start with Ari. As Jamil mentioned, and for people who don't know, Ari was an early pioneer that completed a 32 million token sale in initial coin offering ICO back in 2017. And you are also the co-organizer for the Federation of a Multi-State Blockchain Association across the US. So if I may ask, what do you see as the biggest opportunity for the Web3 space that you would recommend women to join in for?
Sorry, my baby squealed in the last part of your sentence. What was the last part of your question? Sorry.
Yeah, so I'll be interested to learn about the opportunities, the biggest opportunity that you see in the Web3 space, and you would recommend women to join in for.
There's so much opportunity. I mean, we're really early. I tell that to folks everywhere, left and right, all my students, policymakers, investors, we're really early. And so, a lot of people are really excited about the protocols and, the interchaining and the decentralized applications. But I think one of the great things about this space is that it really is communal. It's very open. Even in my experience over the last 5+ years, you can ask most anybody questions. If you're really, really curious, people will help you with resources and teaching and sharing. And so, reach out to people. We need a lot of skills. We don't just need coders, and we don't just need people that have these technical skills. We need people that can help with definitions, that can help, coordinate and cat herd. That people that can speak, people that can write, people that can share stories simply. Because right now, the space has started with a bunch of nerds, and nerds were not very good at marketing. So we need people that are good at marketing, that can, simplify the messages, and we can stop talking about blockchain and all the protocols and talk about what really this technology can do to help humanity. And so, if you have skills and you're interested, literally just go in, jump in, go and check out the code, learn about GitHub. You don't have to code, but check it out, join some community groups in Telegram or Slack or Discord or wherever they are, and start asking questions and get known in the community. Remember, blockchain and crypto is all about amplifying the network effect. And so become part of the network. And then, you know, the devil's in the details. That's where like we need to get some standards, get simple understandings and processes. And yeah, that's my long answer to that.
Awesome. That's awesome. Like, that's a very good suggestion. You really do not have to be technical or nerd to be a part of blockchain. You can just join in, just jump in. That's a good suggestion. Thank you so much. I have known Annette since my early days in Ethereum cat herders. She works with Fellowship of Ethereum Magician, as she mentioned in her introduction. And I spend a decent amount of my work time in creating awareness about upgrades and EIPs. So my next question is for you, Annette. From your experience working with different developers, different NFT project developers, would you talk about challenges that you think need to be addressed to offer inclusion in the blockchain space or in the NFT space?
From my perspective, I think that the biggest kind of space where we miss a lot is the basic understanding, because one part of the problem is having developers or having missing developers who code, and the other part is having community that just doesn't understand the code. So there is a huge potential for people to write simpler understanding and simpler definition, as Ari said, of what the code is and how we can like translate the code into human language. So that's the biggest challenge that I found with the developers, especially when we are talking about from developer to the community kind of transition, because I feel like there is a huge gap that we still miss a lot of people, and we still miss a lot of potential and a lot of capacity of whether it's like guys or girls who can bridge those segments. And also developers can just usually code, so also they're missing people that can just translate it. But I feel like I'm basically just telling retelling the same story as Ari said, but that's actually true. So that's the biggest challenge that we have.
Right. And you actually mentioned the biggest opportunity, the people who are required for translating here, not even dev, have some knowledge, and you can be playing the role of sharing information. Great. Thank you so much. So Jazzy, I know you are a girl with multiple skills. I have personally seen you wearing different hats at different times of the day. And I'm also aware that you aren't involved in active coding or active development work, yet you have a passion to help increase public awareness and the opportunities in blockchain technology for underrepresented communities. I'll be curious to hear what it means to accommodate in your field. What advice would you give to women who wish to enter the space or are already in the space and may feel marginalized?
Yeah, I mean, when I entered the space, I was very young. First of all, I was like fresh out of college. So, you know, that's already intimidating enough. Like you're getting into, I was always the only woman, usually in the beginning. I mean, it's gotten a lot better throughout the years, but like my first few jobs, I was usually one of the only women, definitely younger, and, you know, quite intimidated by like all the amazing developers I was meeting and just like bright minds that were in the space. And so I did definitely feel that, and you almost get like a bit of imposter syndrome. But at the same time, as I've grown throughout the years, I've learned like I've been in the space just as long as a lot of other people, right? So I have to be confident in the content and the knowledge that I have and share that. There's a lot of people who want to hear my story or want to hear my perspective. And so it's a lot of that confidence building. But in general, I think creating communities where women and marginalized communities can find other people like themselves is extremely important. Because like I said in the beginning, I didn't see a lot of people like myself, also, you know, being Latinx and looking for mentors that I could relate to. And so as I've gone throughout the years, I've decided why not build that instead? You know, if I'm not finding it, why not make it? And so that's where creating some of like these DAOs, I have like group chats with women, you know, I'm in a bunch of Telegram groups, and, you know, either building them myself or being a part of one that already exists has helped a lot in finding new people that are similar to me and empowering them as well. I even recently helped a DAO that was focused on younger people getting into the space, like 20 years and younger. And so helping them go to events, learn about crypto, what that means, and really empowering them to take hold of their lives within Web3. And so I think the more that we do that as leaders, the more that we're going to see similar people like us enter the space. And I've been able to crypto pill quite a few of my friends, and they now work in crypto. So I think that little by little, I'll just keep that train going.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, this mixed panel is bringing different perspective. Thank you for sharing. I know Jill. So Jill, you are from a different background. I feel you have a lot to share for women that are not from the technical background. As Ari and Nat, we did discuss about like it's easier for people for technical background to be a part of it, right? And I see that coming from an like legal background, there can be different opportunities. I would like you to speak a bit about opportunities from your perspective from the legal background side.
For me, I think, most of my legal career has been technology adjacent. A lot of my practice has required that I work with IT personnel or databases. And so I've never been a technician myself, but I've always needed to have the capacity to work with, technology or individuals, coders or IT or whatever. I think, similar to what Ari and Zaji,
You got it. Yeah.
said, the ability to translate from technical to real English is really helpful. And I think, in many ways, that's probably my biggest skill in this space is not just to say, to listen to somebody and say, is this what you're saying? But also to persist and know that, to have the confidence to persist and say, I don't understand what you said, and I can't help you until I understand. So can you say that a different way? Let me say this back to you in my words, and you can tell me how far off base I am. And, it's an iterative process. And, just to have the confidence to know that you're not wrong just because you don't understand it when it comes at you in technical speak, and you're not incompetent, and you're not going to be fired. I mean, I guess you can't control whether or not you're fired, but you shouldn't be fired. If you're not a technician, you may not understand those words. And so, it may take some time, and, it takes some, like I said, some confidence and some persistence, but essentially it's more or less my client's job to work with me to make sure I understand what they're doing. Otherwise, they're not going to get accurate legal advice. And so, I think similar to what the other panelists have said, that is both the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity. I think one of the reasons that my clients really appreciate what I do and the way that I do it is that I do take the time to truly understand their projects. And then they know that they're getting, accurate and nuanced legal advice. And they know that I'm, listening to them and reacting to their needs.
Awesome. Thank you. Not just in Web3, but in general, like legal advices are important. And I understand blockchain needs a little more love, a little more support. Translating makes a lot of difference in communication. So thank you for doing what you are doing and sharing this with all of us. Well, we are very close to half-hour mark, but there is more to talk about. So I would like to pass the microphone to Jameel to take it from here.
Yeah, sure. So I think what I want to cover now is what type of tools and support you may have used to help you in your career and things that you might suggest other people to leverage. And so, Zaji, you mentioned mentoring. So let me start with that. Can you talk about your mentoring experience and maybe advise people that are looking for mentors, especially females who might want to approach someone that they think is the right mentor, what the caveats are there, how do you have to approach that, what's been your experience, and what are some of the advice that you might give? And I'll ask that same question to Annette as well. So maybe we'll start with you, Zaji. What's your experience with mentors, and how do you suggest we pick them?
Yeah. I feel like I've seen like a couple ways to approach it. I think in my life, it was a little more organic. It just kind of happened. Like I actually, one of my closest mentors, her name's Ann Wilmot, shout out. I actually met her at a meetup like a few years ago when I was just getting into the space. And it was just one of those things where like, she just kept inviting me to events and, dinners and meetups and things. And it was like, wow, like this lady really, cares about me. And I barely know her. And so it's really nice. And so I think she just saw like, oh, there's a younger person here that like, I want to make sure really gets into this space. And she was big on like Bitcoin from like 2013 and everything. And so she had this deep knowledge, and I was just, following along for the ride. But it was just so important to me that she kept, inviting me to things, kept including me in conversations, adding me to chats. And so I think if you feel like you see somebody out there that you see a lot of potential in, like do something like that, just make it known that you really want to include them in the work that you're doing. And then in addition to that, I think there's the other side of maybe a little more structured, like now that Web3 has grown a lot more, there's a lot of like fellowship programs and projects and things that you can get involved in. So like I was a part of Kernel. There's also like SheFi, for example. These are all different types of like Web3 mentorship type programs where you can actually get paired up with people or find somebody in that program that can really help you grow based off of your skill set. So I think maybe if you don't naturally have somebody that you can talk to, maybe go out and seek them out through more structured approaches. And I think either way, I've met amazing people in both types of approaches. It just depends on maybe where you are at in the system. But I've made some really great connections with women in this space that have really looked out for me and even turned into jobs and things, after a couple of years. So I think it's a really potentially a really great place for a lot of women to get involved.
Yeah, thank you. And Annette, what's your thoughts on that?
Actually, I have a great experience with mentors because the way how I started in the space, in my first few weeks since I started, I got a mentor which I got like Jamie Pitts, who I got introduced thanks to Griff Green, as he introduced me like, this guy can like help you with funding for the project that you are working on right now. And then he was like, no, you're not going to work on this project. I'm going to take you under my own wings and you are going to help out with their magicians. And that's basically how I started. And we still talk together with Jamie and we still work together on the same project for 3 years now. And it's been a great journey, but how to find a good mentor or how to find a mentor, I would suggest that a cold DM approach is a great approach how to get to know people and how to find a good mentors. So just go out on social media, Twitter, Reddit, whatever, Twitter, Telegram chats, Discord chats. And if you like somebody's approach, or if you like somebody's tweet and if you like somebody's either like talks or something, just reach out to him via DMs and just ask him for a quick chat or whatever, or like approach him that you like his work and probably his articles, and then try to get in touch with him. And I'm sure that so many people are extremely helpful in this space and friendly. So I'm sure that they will be very happy to jump on a call with you or meet up for a coffee in the city or something, or even approach people at the conferences and in-person events, as I mentioned. So that's the best advice that I can get you. And also the kernel programs as well, which I was a part of as well.
Got it, fantastic. And so Ari, you mentioned, and Ari, you're big in education, right? And much like me, we're both in the education space. We do a lot in that space. And Jill, you mentioned this notion of communication friction, right? This friction in the ability to communicate if I can't understand what you're saying. And in a big way, education, one of the goals of education is to start to reduce that friction in communication and start to standardize, not really standardize, but to make it easier for us to understand each other. And the more we know about each other via education, the better we can communicate. And the theory is that we can operate better, more efficiently, and so on. So what I would like to understand, in particular within the context of inclusion, right? what are some of the resources that you would recommend us to plug into, whether it's a blog or a podcast, that will help us to better be better communicators, and maybe advance our career and overcome the challenges that may exist in this space? And I think there is, in the crypto space, maybe nobody wants to say it, I'll say it, there's a crypto bros toxicity in the space, and it could be demeaning in certain cases. There was a Twitter person who is a big Rust programmer, and she starts blocking all crypto people just because, and she doesn't want crypto people to even use Rust programming, and so the space has this kind of like this negative thing that is occurring, and maybe we as insiders might not see it. But how do we get educated around what's happening in the space and how to be more inclusive? What are those resources? I'm not saying how do we learn about blockchain, but how do we learn about our social position, and how do we position ourselves in society with the stuff that we're working on, given the context, in the context of inclusion? I'll start with you, Ari, and then I'll go to you, Jill, with the same question.
Yeah, I'd like to take maybe a couple angles on that question. I think one, don't amplify people that are negative and being toxic. So, it hurts. It hurts when someone says mean things about you or treats you in a not kind way, or, poops on something that you really care about, whether it's your work or something you're doing. But if you amplify that and you give it more attention, you're giving it more life than it deserves. And so part of being in the space and part of being a pioneer, I mean, being a woman that's, in the space or working in tech, you're just going to be a minority for a little while, until more women come in. And so you have to grow thick skin. There's no real way around it. That's, my advice. Grow thick skin and don't give things that don't deserve attention more life than it deserves. And then
so Ari, so the resources, like what podcasts do you get? I mean, is there anything that gives you better motivation, the days that you might be down, that gives you better clarity around what's happening in the space, that you recommend, that has helped you, and that you might think other people should get plugged into? Maybe a specific Twitter account that we should follow that is really helping us counter whatever toxicity exists?
I think for me, a lot of that comes offline. So I will suggest some online resources, but making sure that you do build the foundational support structure in real life, offline, with your family, with your spousal units, with your parents, with your siblings, with your best friends. Building those relationships offline are what's going to help buffer those feelings and be that actual support system for when things are really hard. That being said, there are lots of great resources online, joining these community groups, Discord, Telegrams, get known and meet people that someone says something that's really interesting or seems really smart, get to know them, figure out what their background is, and, learn about what their real name is. If their real name is, Crypto Bro 2652, whatever, right? Let's see, there's really great podcasts and investors. So like I really love Jeff Booth and Lynn Alden. They're really great investor analysts. And in Lynn Alden, on her website, she has some really great resources for people that are learning about investing. And I think learning to understand the monetary side of blockchain and crypto is really important, because blockchain is a whole economic engine that's built into the protocols, and that's why it's even more popular and also powerful. And if you don't understand money and finance and economic systems, that's why you would want to, go and spend some time there. There's, great podcasts and resources like Anthony Papolino. He is a little bit bro-ish in his verbiage, but if you put that aside, he has some really great content. He's a great following, and he really breaks it down easily for people. Let's see, if you want to learn about Bitcoin, like Peter McCormack, also very bro-y, but he did a great series of videos called What Bitcoin Did, I think, or What Bitcoin Is. And he meets with like the privacy guys, the security guys, the crypto guys, the protocol guys, like everybody in who's who in the space, especially the OGs. And it's just so informational. So, there's stuff like that. There's, leaders like Jamil, who leads various meetup groups. And so, getting connected with the connectors in the space will help you, kind of navigate. There's great books. I will always recommend the Bitcoin Standard, by Safety Namos. I think he also teaches in the same university that Jamil does, Columbia University. Really, really great book. I think it's one of the basic Bibles, but there's all sorts of books that I'm happy to recommend. But really, when it comes to support systems, you want to do a lot of investing in your offline support system, your family, your friends. And I also say that to people in crypto, like we do a lot of time on Zoom and we meet and talk to people in Slack and Telegram and Discord. As much as possible, get on video at least, get on a Zoom and, meet face to face, because, that's when we humanize people and they're not just digits and, letters on a screen. We start to really treat people like people. Go to the meetups in person, go to the networking events, and, don't forget, behind every letter that's on the screen, there's an actual human being.
Yeah, great point. And with COVID, seemingly receding, there's clearly more opportunity for people to meet in person. And the work that we're doing in New York City, we're definitely going back to that. And there is really no comparison, no Twitter account, no nothing that can compete with shaking hands, talking to people eye to eye, sharing information and sharing stories. So we're really looking forward to that. Jill, you're an attorney, you're an educator kind of by default by being an attorney, because you're explaining to clients why they're in trouble. And so can you tell us what resource you recommend for people in the space within the context of this talk? Like what do you think is a set of resources that people should get plugged into? And you're on mute again. So.
Of course I am. 2 years into the pandemic, and I still haven't learned how to take myself off of mute. Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think one, the question, the answer is going to be different, for different people. To Ari's point and your earlier comment about crypto bros, my experience tells me that, unless somebody wants to change, nothing that you say to them or do, it's not going to hit home. And so I agree with Ari, the best thing to do is to not amplify and to create a community that essentially excludes that kind of behavior, because people's behaviors change based on, what the standard is in the community. And so, I agree about the crypto bros, like they're, yelling at them or telling them that they're exclusionary or misogynistic or chauvinistic or whatever. I don't see that really affecting any change. I've spent most of my adult years in male-dominated spaces. And until about 8 or 9 years ago, I really felt like it was my job to accommodate to the maleness of the space. And in recent years, and I think it's largely a generational thing. And I started spending a lot of time with women in the next generation, my son's generation, for reasons that are long and complicated. But their perspective really helped open my eyes to the fact that that's not the answer. The answer is not for me to accommodate to the maleness of the space. It's for the space to stop being so exclusive. I am a big proponent of language in that respect. I think language has an enormous effect on the way people perceive spaces, even very innocuous language, like saying, he or him as, as a generality instead of, they, or using guys instead of people. Or I do a lot of work in the rugby space. And, I was in a coach development clinic a few weeks ago. And after about an hour, I was the only woman in the room, of course. And I stood up and I said, if we could stop calling players he and just start calling them players for the rest of the day, I would really appreciate it. Now, of course, I'm in a leadership position with that group that I was in. So I had the ability to say that with very little risk. Everybody in the room that they don't, it's a volunteer position, but I was in a leadership position with respect to every other person in the room. So it gave me the luxury to stand up and say, you know, as we continue this course, we need to use players as the generic, not he. So, you know, I read a book when I was 17 or 18. It's a very old book, but I think it's still super valuable. It's called Language in a Woman's Place, written by Lakoff. And she talks about both the way that women use language to make themselves smaller or less assertive or less authoritative, but also the way people use language about women. And it just really struck a chord with me that, you know, from our very early days, we are all using language, and language becomes truth. Words matter. And there's countless studies. I'm fascinated by these studies. There's studies about, they've looked at languages that have gendered nouns, which of course English doesn't, but most other languages do. And looked at languages where certain items are gendered differently. So like in one language, a bridge is feminine, and in a different language, it's a masculine. And then asked people to describe bridges. And in the languages where a bridge is a feminine noun, they describe bridges as graceful and striking. And in languages where bridges have a masculine noun, they describe them as strong and trustworthy. And, you know, it's just so undeniable, the impact of language. So, you know, I think for me, that's something I really work on. I work on my own language so as I don't make myself smaller. And also in the way that I refer to people, that I'm not making them smaller. And I try to help those around me do the same in ways that are, you know, accessible and not off-putting. You know, as far as support groups, I have a chat group of women in rugby, a couple of whom I've never met in person, friends of friends, all of us in leadership roles in rugby in the US. And it is so amazing to have a group of women that you can just, anytime during the day, just get on the chat and say, I just had the worst old white man experience ever, and let me tell you about it. And none of them are going to say didn't happen. None of them are going to say you overreacted. None of them are going to say, oh, I think he was actually being quite reasonable. They all say, that was awful. How did you deal with it? How can we help? And that's really powerful. That chat group has been such a support to me. And at the same time, you can get on and say, I'm having the worst hair day. And they don't think that you're, you know, being frivolous or vain, or, you know, or you can get on and say, look how good my new jeans look. And they, you know, they're going to thumbs up that as well. So I wholeheartedly support getting a group of women, you know, a tribe or a whatever it is, a group of women that absolutely have your back and will support you and will not tell you that you're crazy. And, you know, they'll either talk you down off your cliffs or build you back up or whatever you need. Yeah, I wholeheartedly support that. And then, you know, lastly, I think for podcasts or whatever, I really love Brene Brown. I find her to be both insightful and vulnerable. I find her, you know, she has useful, practical suggestions that can be implemented in your real life. Yeah, so, you know, I do very much enjoy Brene Brown.
And that's just great content there. Thank you. And I posted a link to the book that you mentioned, and I just added it to my shopping cart on Amazon. I never have a bad hair day problem, so I can never really talk about that. But that being said, language is clearly important. I say that language is the first metaverse because it's how we construct our reality in a lot of ways. And if you look at some of the literature like Noam Chomsky and all that, it's very much tied into how we construct this reality we call reality, right? So thank you for that content. And then Brene Brown, I'm going to post a link to her page, and I'm going to follow up on that myself. Thank you for sharing that valuable content. I want to switch topics because we're kind of running out of time. We probably have about another five minutes. I want to go very, very quickly to each one of you, and I'll start with you again, Jill, since I have you here. Let's talk, quickly for maybe about a minute. Work-life balance. Is the Web3 space very demanding, beyond the norms of, and let's say, any other space? And what yeah, and how do you, what are your thoughts on that? How do you recommend people think about it and deal with that, especially if they're going to be new and entering into this space? And then we'll go down to through everyone else on the panel.
You're probably asking the wrong person. When I graduated from law school, I was a single parent of a 7-year-old, and I billed 3,000 hours that first year. So anything short of that, so 3,000 hours meant I probably worked 4,000 hours, which is double, a 40-hour week for most people. So anything short of that seems like a vacation. Also, my son is grown, I don't have kids at home. So I probably don't have the best perspective on work-life balance. I think, like anything else, internet-based or technology-based, and this happened, in Big Law too, outside of Web3, having the flexibility to work and adapt your hours is super valuable, but it also means that you can kind of be working all the time. So it's a mixed bag on that front. And then, as an attorney, I think the main thing I've found is that these projects are moving so fast. I'll have a client call me on Tuesday and say they want to launch a project on Friday, but they need an in-depth legal analysis of like 5 different things before they launch to make sure they're not going to jail. If I had nothing else to do that week, sure, but I generally don't have anything else to do that week. And on personal note, I hate for legal to be the holdup, right? I hate to be the logjam, but the pace of change and the pace of innovation is so quick that it does kind of create some pressure to work hours that you may not need to theoretically, but if you don't, you're holding up the project.
Yeah, I mean, it is a fast-paced place. I'm a single dad. I have 2 daughters, 2 full-time. I'm a full-time dad. Their mom's not around, and so. But I do work 70+ hours a week, and the more I work, the more work is demanded. It just seems to be unending. So Annette, when do you say enough? Like, what's your position on work-life balance in the Web3 space?
I'm trying to be very strict about how I spend my time, actually. And yes, crypto never sleeps, but it's quite a space where you can burn out in like a 2-week period. So you have to be very careful about how you spend your time. So for me, my general rule is try to not open Telegram or any works kind of social media on weekends. That's my like #1 rule. And also then another rule is like an hour before my bedtime to not work or open laptop. So that's kind of like my very quick recipe, how what I use for not burning out, but also know when it's your time to take a break. So when you mentally feel like, okay, it's like I'm getting burned out, or it's like too much, or I have like such a huge work overload, just, take your time off, or just like shut the laptop and tell your colleagues that you need like an hour break or something and go on a walk or do some yoga or meditate or something. But generally speaking, just try to be very careful about how you spend your time and try to I don't have a family, so I can't really speak on that because I'm pretty young still. But that's like how I'm being careful about my life.
Got it.
Work-life balance.
Yeah, thanks for calling us old. Thank you for that. So anyhow, moving on. So Zaji, so you like as a female, do you feel any pressures to, or do you feel difficulty in saying no? Say it's 8 p.m. I don't want to work on this tonight. what's your thoughts on work life in the context of, a woman working in somewhat of a male dominated space, and there's maybe too much testosterone and, chest thumping and all that. How do you handle your life?
Yeah, I think in the beginning, I always felt like I had to like prove myself. And so I was always trying to do the most and trying to be like the best at everything. But I think as time has passed, like I'm still young, but like I have realized that that's not going to like help me grow. Like I'm going to just like slowly kill myself if I like really just burn myself out. So I've been trying as of late to say no to things that I just either I really don't think is going to be a good fit for me, or is maybe like an unpaid opportunity. Like I've been getting a lot of just like, oh, can you just volunteer to do this? And it's like, I just don't really have the time to do that. And so just trying to say no to things that don't fit into the lifestyle I'm trying to create. And then in addition to that, I think I do like a lot of scheduling. Like my calendar has like blocks in it that are like walk your dog, eat your lunch. Like it just helps because then at least people won't double book you for things, and it helps you just take a few breaks throughout your day. But I am also like a working addict. I work all the time. I work East Coast hours. So I start at like 5, and then I of course decided that DAOs were fun outside of my main job. So then I do a bunch of DAO things like up until like 8 p.m. So, it depends, but as long as you're enjoying it, at least it doesn't feel so much like working. And I think that's like the danger of Web3 is some of it is just like so interesting and exciting that you get really like, you get really deep in it and then you can't really get yourself out of it. So just making sure you somewhat prioritize things in your life that matter or are important, whether that's your family or like I have a puppy, whatever, it really helps you try to slowly find balance. But I don't know if anybody in Web3 is fully balanced, but we are trying, I think.
Right, we're definitely unbalanced. I can tell you that for sure. But Ari, you're a successful entrepreneur. You have certain luxuries. With your time, you don't necessarily have to do a 9 to 5. That being said, that also opens up the floodgates for all kinds of commitments that you might end up committing to. So how do you handle it? And you have a family. How do you handle all of that? Tell us your take, and then we'll go to Q&A from the audience. I think there's 1 or 2 questions.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a very, very lucky place and very, very blessed, but only because I've had the sponsorship and mentorship and just wonderful people helping me throughout my career. I wouldn't be in this place without them. And then I am a mom of 3. I just had a newborn, so I had a baby 3 months ago. He's so amazing. I have another one that's 2 years old. He's amazing too. And I have another one that just turned 6. So amazing, 3 boys. And when I had my first child, I thought I could do it all. And so I worked like 100 something plus hours and with my first child, and I kind of regret it. I see the impact that it had on him, and I've learned like the first 5 years of a child's life, having their mother just accessible really, really makes an impact on just their brain creation and how they feel safe in the world. And so with my second 2 children, I had to make some adjustments. I also think like, work-life balance, there's so many ways to answer this. For me, like nothing really feels like work. It's just things that I need to do. And if I'm not going to do it, I just won't feel like I've lived my life, right? There's just like this, I don't know what the word is. I just have to do it. But I also have to do it with, in consideration of my 3 children who, I adore like to the ends of the world, earth. And, my husband, for whoever you choose as your life partner, spousal unit, like choose someone that will support you and allow you to be you. And for me, that's been a big, big critical piece of why I'm able to do whatever I do. Like I would not be anywhere near where I am without the support of my husband and my family, my in-laws and my mother, and the things they do to enable me and empower me. I talk to my children regularly. My 6-year-old yesterday said, "Hey, mommy, can you just not work?" And I'm like, but hey, I really like working. I'm really good at it. And he's like, "Oh, well, can you just do it for a little bit a day?" And I was like, I need to do as much as I can because mommy's really good at it. Don't you want mommy to be really good at it? And then when I stop work, I'm going to pay only attention to you during dinner time and during family time and on our dates together. And he's like, okay, you can keep going then. Just, being able to communicate to my children, if mommy can do it, you can do anything. And so, you have to, I would say, work-life balance, make sure it's an open communication with your family members and all those that are, impacted by your decisions, your children, your spousal units, your family members, whoever is supporting you, to enable and empower you, and be thankful too. Yeah, I don't know if that was a good answer to your question, but
no, it was a fantastic answer. So I mean, you made it very real and very personal. So we're running out of time. I want to get this question in. Ari, thank you so much for that perspective. So we have a question from GLM. Have any of the panelists noticed specific differences in the D&I field? I think that means diversity and inclusion field when interacting as a Web3 personality of some level with traditional work environments. So being in the Web3 space, maybe I'll leave this question to you, Ari, because you have a more prominent name, at least publicly at this stage. Is it different for you now? Are you getting more things? And then I'll leave it to anybody else who on the panel that would like to take that question. Let's go with you, Ari, first, since we have you.
D&I, diversity and inclusion. I think especially lately in the past, say, year, a lot of people in influential positions are going out of their way to be very intentional about who they choose for board positions or panels or whatever the opportunity is. And so I think amplifying that is something that everyone is doing, whether you're well-intentioned white male or someone that's not a well-intentioned white male. And so we see that. I'm building a board right now for another project that I'm launching, and if the well-intentioned white male has to be very intentional, then me as a hopefully well-intentioned Asian woman, I have to be extra intentional. And so I went outside my to-do. Usually I have the 50 people that I turn to for different things. I said, look, I'm going to go put an extra effort to go outside of my normal 50 people for volunteer work or board positions, and really put in extra effort. And so I think whether it's this tech space or this blockchain space, if everyone is doing this, then we're all going to be building this better tomorrow with influencers and leaders that look more like all of us and give opportunities to all of us. I think we have to do it whether you're building a panel or whether you're building a fund, inviting LPs that, aren't going to write $100,000 checks, writing $5,000 and $10,000 checks so that they have the opportunity to earn wealth alongside the $100,000 checks. If you're a startup founder and you're raising funds, don't just go after the typical VCs and angel investors, but invite other people to, be in the journey with you. It's from all efforts. We need to be continually inviting and encouraging and empowering. Jill, I think that's a question.
Yeah, we do have to wrap up. There's one question I want to take, and I'll leave it to the other three panelists, whoever wants to take this question. Is from Christina, and she's really asking, should you be anonymous online and hide the fact that you're a woman? Would that give you some advantages? So I'll leave that question. Zaji, Annette, Jill, any one of you want to take that? And then we have to transition to Pooja, who's going to give her closing thoughts. But it's an interesting question. I wanted to get it out there. Does being anonymous online and having this, a different ID, kind of like how authors of books do, does that help? Any thoughts on that? Zaji, Annette, Jill, if that's your name, if that's your real name.
I think it's very freeing. But and I think even a month ago when we had the pre-call for this panel, I was thinking that it was a huge advantage. But then I made the comment today about accommodating to male spaces. And so I think on an individual basis, it could have real advantages and it's really freeing. But what it doesn't do is change the culture, the maleness of the culture of the space. And so, it's a mixed bag. like most things, I suppose.
I also feel like for me, like my personality and like my identity is like a big part of why I think a lot of people want to work with me. And like, it's like the personal connection that I've made with people has been because I'm very open about who I am. So for me, like my power is being me, but you know, I can see why people want to be Anon, but I think it's only really helped me grow in this space.
Okay.
Just type the
yeah.
question.
Yeah,
I just typed the answer, so.
Okay, yeah, Annette, go ahead.
For that.
Oh, I think they removed it, but oh yeah, I see your answer. Okay, great. So it depends on your personality. Being woman in the space has its pros and cons. It depends if and how you can handle. Okay, great. So you gave some advice to the questioner. Thank you so much for that, Annette. Okay, this is all we have time for. Pooja, do you want to take us home?
Yeah, thank you so much. Couldn't realize the time went by so quickly with lovely conversation. I enjoyed them all, and I hope that many out there would have enjoyed it too. Thank you, Jamil, for moderating this interesting panel. And I know we are a bit over time. Thank you everyone for sticking around. Someone said, life is not a competition between men and women, it's a collaboration. I hope to see this collaboration making the blockchain space even stronger for future adoption. On this note, we, the Ethereum Cat Herders, thanks all our panelists, co-organizer, and especially ECH contributors Shubhangi Gokhale and Kenneth Lester from ECH Operations for communication and making intros. I know there are many female out who are looking for an opportunity to join the Web3 space. I wish them luck and hope this discussion will inspire them to move a step towards the future. Thanks again for joining us on the International Women's Day celebration. Have a good rest of your day.